talk about the BBC. We do that quite a lot. Usually because it's their fault that we have to. But the BBC today is going to try and have Donald Trump's $10 billion defamation lawsuit thrown out of a Florida court. But will they succeed? Well, let's talk to media lawyer Mark Stevens about that. Good afternoon to you, Mark.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thanks so much for joining us. A lot of people keep talking about this being a $5 billion lawsuit, but it is actually $10 billion in total, isn't it? So tell us what grounds the BBC thinks they have for getting rid of this lawsuit, which Donald Trump, of course, brought against the BBC for their splicing together two bits of a speech he made on January the 6th, 2021, ahead of those riots and the Capitol riots, where basically, back in 2024, they put this panorama out with two bits of the speech spliced together 52 minutes apart, where it basically made it look like he'd said, yeah, let's go and have, some violence at the Capitol, which, of course, he hadn't said at all. What are the grounds for throwing that out?
Well, when we last spoke about this, Julia, I'd said that I thought the BBC would make this very application, asking Judge Roy Altman to, in Miami, to throw out the president's $10 billion suit, because the programme, one, never aired in America, so consequently, two, Florida lacks jurisdiction, and thirdly, and perhaps crucially, there's no pleading of actual malice against the president, who, as a public figure, that's a necessary element of the case. So both on the law and on the facts, this case, all things being equal, shouldn't proceed. So, yeah,
it wasn't in America. There was a lot of talk about maybe some people had watched it using a VPN or that it was available on BBC iPlayer to subscribers. But that seems to have been thrown out. But also, you mentioned not just the malice, the deliberate attempt to try and damage him, but there's also, I suppose, no evidence that he has been damaged, given that this show aired only in Britain a couple of weeks before the November 2024 election. Looking back at what had happened, and of course he won that election.
Yeah, he did, and under American law, an edit mistake isn't.
It wasn't a mistake.
All right. Well, whatever it was. Under American law, particularly the Bill of Rights, but also their libel laws, they have to show not only was it defamatory, but also there was actual malice against
deliberate attempt to hurt him. If this case,
and that constitutional protection, you have to prove with evidence. And at the moment, on the filings I've looked at in court, which are public, there is none of that there to look at.
Donald Trump's missed the statute of limitations to bring it by a couple of weeks to bring it in this court when it was all emerged. I think it's very interesting that it only emerged at that time. After that point, I wonder how deliberate that was. But if he had been,
I think if you know that there's been damage, you know immediately. So if you've been libelled, it's not something that you wait a year to learn about.
Well, he could have lost the election. This could have been the key thing in a few key states, I think was the argument, but that wasn't the case. But here's the thing. If he hadn't missed the statute of limitations in British courts, would he have a stronger case in the British courts because we don't have protection of freedom of speech, and we do have a sort of lower requirement for someone for libel?
Yeah, I mean, the Americans have much stronger protections for free speech than we do. But I think this case, even in this country, would have real difficulty, because the question here would be, has this program alone caused serious harm to the president? And I think the answer to that is pretty obviously no. There was a lot of reporting about this speech. 8 judges in America, including some Trump-supporting judges, have said that there was credible evidence that the speech warranted or counted as incitement. The Hill, both houses decided to try and impeach him. So all of those things and the reporting around those are more likely to have damaged his reputation than a panorama that wasn't shown in America and unseen by Americans.
Okay. I think you said at the time you thought, that this could likely be thrown out. The BBC said quite early on, they apologised to Donald Trump because what they did was wrong, but we've had 2 major resignations, including the Director General, the head of news. Yeah. But they also said, they were going to fight this case. Do you think that actually they're more likely to, if it doesn't get thrown out today, to settle? And just finally, what sort of legal costs are we looking at, even if the case was thrown out today?
Well, let's deal with the legal costs. The legal costs, each party pays their own in America. It's not like here where the winner gets the loser to pay.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. So that each party's paying its own legal costs. But I think that the problem here is that 10 billion is a sizable, well, it's like 90% of the annual budget of the BBC.
Yeah.
They can't afford to settle it at anything like that amount of money. I mean, if there was a nuisance claim for £50,000, yeah, of course you would settle it.
Yeah.
But I don't think this is a commercial settlement situation.
Although Trump has settled for far less from other American...
He has, but he's never gone this low, and I think his lawyers are on a no-win, no-fee, so they're in for a slice of the action.
Yeah.
So they're going to keep the numbers as high as they possibly can to line their own pockets.
Right, fascinating. Mark Stevens, thank you very much indeed. Media lawyer there, Mark Stevens. He was right. He predicted on the very first day this came out, this was going to be what's happened. Tom, so did you think Donald Trump's got a case?
Well, I mean, time will tell, but at the same time, I think it was mainly about proving the point and putting the wind up the BBC and all the rest of it. Rather,
I was in favour of that.
Surely that would come. But, you know, as someone who was sat in Britain, the idea of licence fee payers having to foot the bill for the mistakes of Panorama staff.
It wasn't a mistake.
Always.
They did it deliberately. I think they did do it maliciously as well. I really, really do. There's no way. It's never accidentally happened in the other direction, has it? But there we are. I don't want licence fee money being paid to Donald Trump on this, absolutely. Tom Slater, thank you so much for joining us. Ian Collins is